1. I hitched alone for 3 weeks in the Balkans this summer. Being a girl alone can be risky, but the drivers I encountered were super nice, and some of them even bought me food and water. Everyone was concerned about my safety, but I was just fearless and confident. The incident happened the last days of my trip. Before I start my story, I feel the need to defend hitchhiking. It is overly not as dangerous as people think. I got 22 rides in total during my trip, and just one went wrong. I don't mean to discourage anybody, especially girls, from hitchhiking, because it is an amazing experience. I myself should have been more careful anyway. I feel bad for providing people with another hitchhiking gone wrong story, while there are so many beautiful ones. I plan on writing everything in a blog, so if you're interested, I can post it in the comments when finished. So I had already hitchhiked successfully through 5 countries, but I had a bad feeling this morning while walking to a gas station outside of a little town. I started asking couples and families if they go my direction, but I was unlucky, so I decided to raise my thumb like I usually did the last weeks. Immediately a guy stops and asks for sex. I refuse, but he stays 5 minutes trying to convince me. The minute he leaves, another car stops with 2 guys inside. They don't ask for sex, but they look at me in the worst way possible, so I refuse the ride. After 1 minute, a red van stops. The guy is young and good-looking, with a nice smile. He looks trustworthy enough. I jump in the van. The first 30 minutes we make some small talk and things are looking good. But then he starts to talk about sex. What is wrong with men in this place? I ask him to stop because I feel uncomfortable. He calls me a cold woman, says I should relax. He starts talking about how hot I am and that his dick is going to explode. I ask him again in my most serious way to stop talking about his dick. I explain to him that I am not a prostitute, and I am not exchanging rides for sex. So if this is not okay, he can leave me here. He looks serious, and he says he will take me to my destination. Awkward silence for 10 minutes. Then he says, "Say something. I picked you up, entertain me." I am thinking this ride is not good at all. We stop in a place to eat. I am seriously thinking to stay here and get another ride. But I look around and the place is full of men, not even one woman. All of them look at me like they want to rape me. I decide to stay with my driver. He looks more serious now. Maybe he will be okay. We get back in the car and, after 5 minutes driving, he tries to convince me to go to this eco-village, only 5 kilometers from here. I refuse multiple times, but he makes the turn anyway. I am very angry and scared. We take a small mountain road. There are indeed signs for this eco-village. I am thinking I can get another ride from there. We arrive in this eco-village, but he doesn't stop, he keeps driving. That is the limit for me. I grab my backpack. Always keep your stuff with you. And I open the door. I jump out of the van, he keeps driving. I know he will make a turn and come back. I have to find a safe place. There is a woman working on a field. I go and stand in front of her. Indeed, he appears again, driving to the highway we were on before. He stops the car for a few seconds, and then he keeps going. I realize I am still in danger, but at least out of this pervert's car. I start walking. My hands were shaking. I arrive in this eco-village. I am thinking that these people can help me. Maybe give me a lift to the highway, because this guy could be waiting for me anywhere, and the road is mostly empty. I enter the eco-village and I go directly to the toilet. Before I enter, a woman stops me and she politely asks me if I paid for entrance. I tell her I really need to use the toilet first. I am almost crying. She agrees. I enter the toilet and I start crying in shock. I try to relax, but it's hard. I go out of the toilet, and this woman is waiting for me. I try to explain to her what happened, but I start crying again. She looks concerned. She brings me to her boss. It is a 50-year-old woman that looked to me like a mother figure. Like a fellow woman in this world, happy to help. I try to explain to her what happened while crying. She also looks concerned. She invites me in her bungalow, then out the back door. At this moment she tells me something like, "Call the police, darling, you are not welcome here," before she slams the door in my face. I can't believe what just happened. I want to shout at her that tomorrow it could be her, or her daughter in my place. That she is a mean person, and if this guy is waiting for me, she will be responsible for my rape. But instead I keep crying while exiting the eco-village. I start walking these 5 terrifying kilometers in this empty road. There is a man loading his car with his children around him. I approach him, begging for a lift to the highway, but he just tells me to walk. I think of calling the police, but I don't know the number and I don't trust them anyway. But looking back, this is what I should have done. I keep walking and walking, trying to calm down. Sometimes there was a house with a couple of people outside. Other times there was nobody and I was shitting my pants. Luckily, no sight of a red van. I finally make it to the highway. Now I am crying because of relief. There is a bus stop. I'm so lucky. The bus comes after 1 hour. I spend my emergency money for a ticket, and I arrive safely to my destination. I hitched very carefully one more time after this incident. I think I need some time to feel comfortable on the road again. But I can't simply forget how beautiful hitchhiking can be most of the time. Pervert driver, let's not meet again. Eco-village hypocrites. I will find you on TripAdvisor and I will ruin you. 2. 4 years ago, I was having a drink with my ex-girlfriend at a favorite pub. We frequented quite often. I still do. This pub is notorious for being an anarchist hangout, and weird people are quite common here. But everything always works out fine. We've been going here for a few days already. We both had the time and money, and all our friends were always there. At some point, my ex said, "Look at the guy at the window's end of the bar. He's been constantly staring at me for the past few days and he creeps me out." It's hard to creep out my ex. She's a tough woman who'd seen the world more than I did. I see a regular guy with a hoodie, slightly sunburned face. Nothing too special at first sight, except for the look in his eyes. Like he was really surprised to see her. Unnaturally wide-open eyes. Didn't blink as far as I could tell. As I said, it's not uncommon for weird people to attend this pub, so he didn't look too freaky to me. Jokingly, I told her to give him her patented derp face that would put my then 6-year-old niece into a laughter-induced coma, to cut the ice and see what he'd do. Afterwards, I'm glad she refused, but I was confused by her being so creeped out. I said something like, "Okay, well, everyone here's on your side, and from the looks of it, he doesn't have any friends here. Don't worry about it." We went on, minding our own beers, talking to my friend, having fun, whilst keeping an eye on this guy, as he did on us. Then at some point, near closing time, this guy closed his eyes, mumbling something, and got up, walking towards the door. A big guy accidentally bumped into him, causing his hood to slide off, revealing the rest of his head. His hair looked like it was partially done by a lawnmower, and parts that were still long enough were turning into half-assed dreadlocks. He stood still and started staring at my ex again. My ex stares back, and I guess she's finally found the courage to put up her hands like, "What you looking at, boy?" To my amazement, his eyes grew even bigger, and then he just left. A day later, my ex gets friend requested by a guy, with only a kitchen knife as his profile picture, and his name, PP, as public data online. She got requests from strangers all the time, and simply rejected it. Nothing too much out of the ordinary. Then PP sent her a message. "Don't you remember? It's P, from the pub. She told him she didn't remember any pee, and it's hard to when someone has only a knife as a profile picture. He then stopped responding. 2 days later, she gets another friend request, different profile, a guy called PP. Picture of our wide-eyed friend, tongue out, and that fucking knife in hand. Do you remember now? Now my ex really started to freak out, but, wise as she is, denied remembering him and blocked him. He tried to befriend her several times after, with unique accounts each time, but with a recurring theme, the knife and the name PP. The last time, before she got the chance to block him, he told her that they were lovers in previous lives, dating back to Jesus Christ's birth. I knew then he was psychotic. After that he stopped trying. But we started bumping into him on a regular basis, because we were frequenting that pub, maybe a little too much. He never talked to us, just stared sometimes. Other people started noticing, and were making jokes about it eventually. He wasn't bothering anyone, paid his beers, and even seemed to get along with other weirdos. His hair seemed to be cared for too. We shook it off. Maybe he was clearing up and left him to be. Roughly 6 months later we broke up. It was for the best for both of us. She stopped frequenting the pub as much as I do. And I think PP started noticing. He was visibly confused when I was with a different girl. I think another year went by. He and I were outside smoking when he spoke to me. He said, "I know your name." "All right, let's hear it," I answered. I'm pretty used to crazies talking nonsense, so I was acting kinda indifferent. "You're Jay's son," he said while pointing to a random friend of mine, otherwise not related to this story. I can tell you our names were not A or J, not even close. I denied, to which he started talking jitter about seemingly biblical events. Can't say I've read it, so can't confirm. He then just left. I was just weirded out enough to relate it to the newspaper article I read the day after. Some mentally ill homeless dude stabbed someone on the street, and he got arrested. I never saw him again. Let's never meet. 3. This happened 3 years ago in the middle of July. I'm female and I was 16 years old at the time. I live in Canada, Ontario, and everyone usually has this image that Canada is really safe. However, that perception will not stop any creepers. There's a lot of crazy shit that happens here from time to time, more often now than before. To start off, I live in the suburbs. It is not the most safest city, but it can be safe if it's daytime, along with being in a well-crowded area. I was going on an evening walk, which I did quite often during the summer, usually before sunset as I had to be home before that. The path I take my walk on is on the sidewalk of a main road, so there are lots of cars passing by, and still quite a few cars pass by before sunset, as this is the time some people get home from work as well. I was walking, minding my own business and enjoying the cool evening air. A car honked. I didn't think much of it, as I wasn't sure if it was at me. But there also wasn't much traffic either. On the sidewalk there is an entrance to the plaza, so cars driving onto the main road can turn onto this plaza. I look both ways to make sure a car isn't going to pull in, and I crossed. Strangely, after I crossed, I noticed the same car from the corner of my eye. This is when I realized the honk was probably at me. After I crossed, I looked back. I don't know why I looked back, but I acted on my hunch to look. I now wonder if I could have avoided this if I just didn't look. In that moment, the man made eye contact with me as his window was down. He was turning into the plaza, although his car wasn't really in the plaza. He turned his car into the entrance and just stopped it so he was completely blocking off the sidewalk. If any cars wanted to come in, they can't because he blocked it off with his car. And if anyone is walking on the sidewalk, they'd have to go around his car. I was really confused but alarmed. He opened his car door and starts to approach me, and I began to back away so he isn't too close to me. To describe the man, he wasn't that tall but still taller than me. He wore these big black sunglasses, so, unfortunately, I don't know what his entire face looks like. He wore a Brazil t-shirt, FIFA World Cup at the time, and white pants. He began to converse with me, telling me that he thought I was some woman that worked at some sort of shop he goes to, and I told him no. I knew that this is a red flag and probably all BS as well. I had my guard up the entire time. I did not want to talk to this man, but I did not want to make it appear that I was frightened, so he doesn't try to pull some kind of stunt. He was still trying to create conversation with me. He repeatedly kept telling me I was beautiful to the point it would make anyone feel uncomfortable. Which really did make me feel uncomfortable, but I just played it off by saying thank you. He then asked me, "How old are you?" to which I then said, "I'm a minor," thinking that maybe he'd just leave me alone. Clearly I thought wrong. He then asked me where I was from, to which I thought, saying my ethnicity isn't something private to myself, so I told him. I responded saying I'm from Syria. I don't know why I asked the same thing back to him, because I realized that I am just feeding the conversation, but at the time, I didn't want to show my fear, so I was just trying to appear calm. He then told me that the old president of his country was Syrian, which is probably a lie, and was just trying to find some way to relate to me. He then told me Arabic women are very beautiful. At some point in this conversation, he kept calling me beautiful and pretty, which was still making me uncomfortable. He asked me if I were looking for any guys. If I was interested, I told him no. He then said, "What boy is causing you trouble?" I replied saying that stuff is all a waste of time, thinking if I said that, maybe this time he will leave me alone because at some point, he seems like he's trying to hook up with me. Or had some other intention, judging by the way he was acting and talking, which is not something someone usually initiates on the sidewalk of a main road. I don't know why I tolerated this uncomfortable conversation to this point. Because he then tells me, "You're so beautiful, I don't see why boys wouldn't like you." On the inside I am thinking, what the hell does someone say in response to that? I just awkwardly forced out a laugh. He then proceeded to say, "Seriously, how old are you?" I know I shouldn't have said what I said just now, but I told him how old I was. I said I was 16. He just stood there saying, "Wow, I would never have thought you were 16. You seem way more mature. I thought you were at least 24. I took the opportunity to ask how old he was, since he was so persistent in knowing my age. He is 32 years old. This man is twice my age. I asked for his name because in the back of my mind I felt like if I had this information about him, it could be useful. Again, this was probably not a good idea because I realized afterwards this is only feeding the conversation. He told me his name. His name is Jonathan. He asked me for my name, and I said that's a secret. At the time I was thinking, that was slick of me, but I'm actually pretty thankful he didn't get aggressive. He kept insisting that he will move his car from the middle of the entrance, so we can talk. And I said no, I had to get going, so I said that I'm leaving. To which he says, "Why?" What do you mean, why? He then started asking me for my number. I said I don't give my number to strangers. He was telling me that he really wanted to be in contact and started asking if I had Facebook or WhatsApp, to which I said no. He kept insisting that we keep in contact, after I repeatedly refused to give him any sort of my contact information. He then says, "Hey look, I'm gonna go move my car." I thought this was my chance to leave because he wanted to move his car, so he can continue talking to me, so at that moment I said, "I'm leaving, bye." At this point I just had enough. I thought that was the end of it, because I heard him say bye after I turned around to leave. Only, when I looked to my right, I noticed he was following me in his car. He rolled down his window and began to smile and wave at me, which was really disturbing. This really freaked me out, so I started to walk faster. When I looked back, I didn't see his car, but I was able to connect the dots and realize he went into the gas station that was behind me. Unfortunately, this still wasn't over. His car was parked in the gas station, and he proceeded to walk on foot, in the same sidewalk I am walking in, so I definitely believe he was following me. My fight-flight mode broke in, and I began to run home, which was only minutes away. I even took off my sandals so they wouldn't snap and end up hurting myself while running, as I have 32-year-old Jonathan on my trail. I even stopped for a moment to explain to these two ladies that there is a man following me. to which they looked at me like I was crazy and ignored me. Fortunately, I made it back home safely, and when I looked back, I couldn't see Jonathan, so I assumed he just turned back when he saw me running. I consider myself lucky that he didn't start running after me. I truly believe that if all this didn't occur on the sidewalk of a main road, but rather in a secluded area, he probably might have tried something. His presence made me feel uncomfortable, needless to say. These evening walks also came to an end. So Jonathan, I hope we never meet again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 244. Thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, I've never actually been hitchhiking myself, and although it might just take one bad situation, I think, well, one bad encounter is really all you need. I mean, you hear all those nasty stories of people, been out hitchhiking and they've been picked up by the wrong kind of person. And, was it Ivan Milat? Was that his name? Or was it Backpackers he was after? Anyway, but, only takes one and then you're done for. So, I'm sure it's a lot of fun, but if you're going to do it, then maybe do it with a friend. Certainly try and avoid doing it on your own. Of course, I might just be cynical what with all these scary stories I've done. Who knows? Okay, with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.